Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Dana B. with Mountain Patriots Educational Ministries and my good friend Scotty S., who's part of our 3%, and our co-chair, Charlie Markert, as always. And we want to thank everybody for joining us tonight on our Mountain Patriots Educational Ministries Constitution meeting. This is going to be a big deal tonight. But before I get started, I want to tell you a little bit about Mountain Patriots. The Constitution is we believe that it's in the book. So let me slide down. This is our website. It's pats.com. We're celebrating America's 250th anniversary. And like I was just saying, everything we do is in the book. Which book? Well, first off, we've got the Holy Bible, and that's where a lot of the Constitution came from, plus the way we live. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And since we're also a prep group to make sure that people are taken care of and a community service organization, we also say it's in the book. We have our good friend, the late Rick Choi, as we know him as Samuel Crider, who wrote the book, The Thinking Prepper. And I would strongly suggest that everybody contact me if anything happens. This is the book that you want to have if something were to happen. I don't care whether it's a grid down situation or just a major serious thunderstorm. Everything is in there on what to do. So this is our website. There's all kinds of information on here, who we are, what our mission is, supporting our ministry, where to donate. There's all kinds of information on here about all the podcasts and all of the Wake Up Winchesters that we've done. Here's the Honey Badger Report, Winchester Star articles. As most people know, there's over 70,000 people right now that are missing in Venezuela. There's our calendar of events are all here. You can find just about everything. And also, there's a 20% off of everything right now in our Mountain Patriots store. I strongly suggest you check out the fall's coming. Check out the hoodies, the shirts, the t-shirts, everything is, we have stuff for your dog. I mean, it's all in here. There's some great stuff. There's the Liberty Man, and Charlie will tell you a little bit about the Liberty Man celebrating our 250th anniversary. We are looking for people to do podcasts with as far as that's concerned, but everything is right here. Our Rumble channel is here. Our YouTube channel is here. And like I said, we go by John 8:32. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So tonight's going to be pretty jam-packed with a lot of information. But before we get started, we always give, all glory goes to Yeshua. Okay, everything goes to God, as you know, and we call him Yeshua, Yahuwah, and Yeshua. And we'll hear a little bit more about that as Wayne does a little bit of training for us later on tonight. So before we get started, I'm going to have my great friend and pastor, preacher extraordinaire, Mr. Scott Sturdivant, lead us in the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance, if you will, sir.
Heavenly Father, once again, we thank you for your blessings upon us, Lord. We thank you for your mercy. We thank you for the blood applied to our lives. We just ask that you watch us, set a hedge of protection around us, Lord. Watch our nation, Lord. Protect us from the evil that's out there, and just by the glory of your name, lead us, guide us, and direct us. In the blessed name of Christ, amen.
Amen. You can see the flag behind me. If you'll join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Awesome. I love this country. I really do. I've got my infamous Barbara designed the Mountain Patriots logo, if you can see it's behind me as well. But Mountain Patriots has been around now for a little over 4 years. This is our 50th month of pretty much every Monday for the last 4 years. And I'm going to give you the credo and the mission statement as written by the group of Mountain Patriots ourselves. This is Mountain Patriots Educational Ministries. Our purpose. Mountain Patriots is a group of USA-loving, constitutional, conservative American citizens dedicated to saving, serving, and preserving our county, state, and country. We believe that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and we are bound by those beliefs. Our credo: we assist with support, safety, and security of our neighbors in Frederick County and abroad. Our mission is to build a caring, freedom-loving, compassionate cadre of citizens and patriots with positive attitudes and a willingness to share their time, effort, and their sacred honor. Our vision: we the Mountain Patriots are committed to be patriotic and peaceful examples of we the people. We operate within the moral principles of the United States Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights, as derived by the biblical worldview of our founders, and do so in our community and communities across the Commonwealth of Virginia and abroad. Our aim is to take back and preserve Virginia and the country for we the people. We help support individuals and their families to emotionally, spiritually, and physically survive and thrive in our communities, and we strive to motivate and engage the electorate to be sufficiently involved in our governing bodies and hold those governing bodies accountable in their performance of those duties that we have granted to them. Our strategy: it's our commitment to help families in need and to educate and activate this community through conferences, community meetings, a variety of educational, training, and informational videos, newsletters, podcasts, and preparedness training with a Christian worldview. We accomplish our goals for our community through tax-deductible contributions along with volunteers from our group and our communities. Our guiding principles: we will be vigilant, we will be trustworthy, we will be prepared, we will be reverent, we will be respectful, we will be kind, and as we all know, we will be nice. That's one of the most important things that we can possibly be. But that's our mission statement. And as you know, we are a ministry. We operate solely on contributions that are made from people out there. We ask you, buy us a coffee, jump on our website, throw us $1 or so. It takes a lot to run this. We spend 24/7. Neither Barbara nor I work, but that's not the point. We work at this. This is the most important thing. And you will see in the next coming months why this has been such a serious project. I sincerely believe that we were called and anointed by God, all of us here, to save this country. So I'm going to start off tonight with the Dana report, and we have a lot to cover tonight. This is going to be an exciting night, guys. I'm telling you, there is a lot that is. We always say that. Charlie jokes with me because he'll say, "Dana, you always tell me there's a whole lot happening." You know, that's probably my line. But there's a lot going on. First of all, as you all know, the Frederick County Fair is right now. There is a table out there. They're looking for people to help out for the Frederick County Republican Committee. It's on the FCRC website. As you all know, the elections are coming, and you can vote until August 4th. And please go vote. Right now, there are 3 candidates that are running for Senate here in Virginia. There's the incomparable David Williams, who is absolutely fantastic. There's also a super young lady by the name of Kim Farrington. She's fantastic. And as you all know, there's also our buddy Bert Misizawa. He is a lieutenant colonel, and he is running for Senate as well. So I'm not going to tell you who I voted for. I'm not going to tell you who you voted for. I'm going to tell who you vote for. I will tell you that all 3 of the candidates are fantastic. We were hoping to have Kim and Bert up here. We already had David last week, who was absolutely fantastic. He was finishing Bible verses with us. So he was excellent. We also have Ben Klein that is running for Congress. And if you know anything about what's going on in the United States, there's communism coming at us. So make sure you get out there and you grab a buddy and you go vote. A couple real quick things. The Board of Supervisors also has a vote. There is the Gainsborough Board of Supervisor seat that is up for grabs. And there's also the Back Creek and the chair. So I'm not going to tell you who to go vote for. Do some research. Go in and look at FCR, the Frederick County website, and pick out who you want to vote there. Also, there's a big thing about data centers, and President Trump has been really pushing for data centers. We have, and this is just us, we feel that we have enough data centers here. Okay, there's a lot of reasons. We have a report on this that's on our website. We don't want another one here. I'm going to say that first and foremost. But as a national security concern, we do need to be the leader in data centers worldwide. So there's one of the things that you need to know. We don't want them here because we have enough, but they can go in somebody else's backyard because we do need them. There are 3 amendments that are on the books for November. One of them is the abortion amendment. The other one is same-sex marriage. And the third one is felons voting. That is a whole other topic. We're not going to cover that here tonight because we're going to cover the Constitution. I think you're going to get a lot out of that. Now, we are going to be doing ballot training. We follow the news very closely, and as you all know, President Trump is really pushing hard right now on the Save America Act. We may not get all of it, but I think we'll get some of it, which means that citizens only would vote paper ballots in one day. People say, oh, it's not going to happen. I personally think it's going to happen, and I'm going on the record to say right here and right now, I think it's going to happen, which means if there's paper ballots that we have to be ready to train for that. So we'll be doing and announcing when we're going to be training for paper ballots and how to hand count ballots. That's coming up. I have a conference call with a couple people this week in another county that'll be doing that with me. My buddy Jocelyn, she's probably on here too. She's phenomenal. Jocelyn's like I am. She'll say, I've got to take some time off. And I'll say, okay, right after I put out these signs or for these candidates, or I've got these non-abortion, these anti-abortion signs I've got to do, and I have to be at a committee meeting, and after that, I'll go home. And while I'm on the road, I'll be talking. She's phenomenal. So we've got some great patriots on here, guys. I'm telling you. I will tell you this, the wheels are falling off of the Democratic Party right now. The Democratic Socialists of America, even the Democrats themselves are going, wait a second, this communism thing is going way too far. When you have people like Bill Maher that are out there right now and James Carville saying, this is not our dad's Democratic Party. In my opinion, they were bad enough to begin with, okay, over the last couple decades, but they are way off the rails. How do we know? Well, they'll swear to you that there's no election cheating, but yet we know that 6,600 votes were found in New Jersey, but here's a big one for you. 75,000 non-citizens were called in for jury duty in New Jersey. You figure out what would happen with that. You also have Fulton County, you have Maricopa County, you have Colorado with Tina Peters. All of this stuff is going to come out. So the wheels are falling off. Election rigging is about to be proven. Another thing that's happening, these are just a couple highlights. Ilhan Omar, you know about her brother, you know about the $30 million that now it's 18,000 or whatever she claimed on her tax returns. But her sister, by the name of her, I can't remember her first name, I think it's Sarah Noor, got $20 million in USAID. That's not including the $30 million, but on another scam in Minnesota. It is the biggest fraud in Minnesota or in history, okay, on USAID. You also have Lieutenant Governor, I think her name is Luke, in Hawaii. She's getting nailed for all kinds of criminal conspiracies that are happening there, plus people on the down ballot or people that are former people that were in government there in Hawaii. You also have the Fauci diary that just came out. Not only did this guy say, wow, we had all of these deaths, but COVID really wasn't real, if you read his diary. And boy, we did a great job. And I told all of these people how great I am and to award me for all kinds of things that I did for COVID. The guy is a snake. And it's about time we hang him up by his toe. Actually, we put him in a room and we give him an injection for every person that ever got one. That's just me talking. They also stopped the ivermectin and things that would happen. They stopped all of that stuff. But if you take a look at the Amish, that's starting to come out. Why is it the Amish don't have the problems that we have? It's the injections. Okay, you got RFK and his group that are doing things about that and the food.
Injections and food additives.
Injections and food additives. There's over 9,900 food additives. So Kennedy's trying to get rid of most of that. Biden was blackmailed by China and Ukraine for over $2 million each. Go figure. Okay, look it up for yourself. Don't believe me. With all the things that are going out, and Charlie's going to cover this a little bit more in detail, I want everybody that's listening to me, please have your head on a swivel. We're watching. I grew up in Baltimore. There was a 74-year-old man that got the hell knocked out of him. I'm just going to say it like that in Baltimore. Most of this stuff they do not talk about on mainstream news. If you're flipping around on the channels on Rumble, you're going to find it. YouTube has a thing about banning me or blocking me and blocking my First Amendment right. And we're going to talk about rights tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about our Constitutional Compliance Committee and what we need to do with redress of grievances, which Charlie will handle. But I want you all to have your radios handy. If you don't have a radio and you're here in our grid or our sector, get in touch with me. They're not expensive. It's $75. It's already programmed. We'll teach you. We pay for a repeater. We have net on Sunday night. We have a net on Tuesday night. And I want to make it known, we have a couple different operators that do the net for us. Gunny's on here. He's one of them. I'm one of them. Keith is usually one of them, but he's moving. And Julie's one of them as a net control operator. We do it on Sunday nights and Tuesday nights, but we will be moving our Tuesday night to Thursday night. So when you play this back, just remember to change it to Thursday night. That'll probably happen in September. Let's see. People, unfortunately, are clueless, and other people can be dangerous. So make sure that you have a flashlight with you, a penknife or something with you, a radio. A flashlight is there to blind somebody if they try to come after you. You know what a pocket knife is for. You want to have your radio. You want to have you want to have a tourniquet with you. You want to have something with you in case something happens. There are things that we are very concerned about before and during and after the elections. These guys are nuts, folks. If you're watching what's going on, they are absolutely off the rails. You've got so many people that are on antidepressants. They think they're a dog. They eat out of cat bowls. They wear pussy hats. I mean, I'm going to say it like that. There's all kinds of things that are happening out there, and people are way off of the flipping rails. Why do I say that? All you have to do is look. One of our Mountain Patriots works for VSP, Virginia State Police. A good friend of his, an officer, a special agent for the Virginia State Police, was just stabbed last week when he's going to arrest somebody, and this guy is out there stabbing homeless people. I mean, these are people that can't even protect themselves. First of all, they shouldn't be homeless, but our government is stealing from us, which is we're working on trying to take back. But they're out there and they're nuts. If we win the election, they're coming after us. Okay? If we lose the election, they're coming after us because we're going to prove it. That we didn't win, and election fraud is true. So these people are dangerous. They'll be prepared before, during, and after. Now, every Monday going forward, and we have for the last few months, we have this guy is phenomenal. I hope he's on here, and he will be here tonight, is our buddy GR. And GR has been fantastic. He is teaching us all about the Constitution, what it means, the writings that go behind it. From reclaimingtherepublic.org, I can go up and look certain things up. How does our Constitution work? Our Constitution was here to protect us, okay? The forefathers foresaw what might happen, and we're learning every way that we can do that tonight. We're going to introduce you tonight to this young gentleman who has been fantastic. In 2016, Trump was elected in 16. In 2017, at his inaugural speech, you'll notice that there were 12 JAG officers and officers behind him. It has never happened at a speech. He said that we are taking the government back and we are giving it back to you, the American people. Well, we're only going to move. He can only move as fast as we are. Now, there's a lot of people waking up, and Mountain Patriots has been there all the way through this over 4 years, doing that and trying to bring you content and training so that we can get to that point faster. Where are the arrests, you ask? Well, the swamp is deep and wide, and we'll get there, but we have to win in November. Also, City Elders meeting, really quick, is Wednesday morning. We are covering a lot that has to do with the abortion laws and things like that. Killing children is just beyond me, but that's another, we've covered that in quite a few things. We'll cover that in another day. As you notice, when I say things are off the rails, that there is SCOTUS that passes or sees certain things, okay? And SCOTUS is not there to do what we think SCOTUS is supposed to be doing, okay? We're not supposed to figure out things and then set it up the line to have SCOTUS. We're the people that run it, okay? We're supposed to have that, and we're going to learn how to do that. But a lot of these judges are coming back, like the First Circuit Court just overturned the mail-in ballots. So lower courts are trying to overturn what the highest court in the land is doing. That's how backwards this is. Also, real quick, 77% of Virginia, this is just Virginia, and higher say they do not want communism. So what does that tell you about the elections? That tells you that even Democrats are looking at this going, wait a second, we may hate Trump, but we like our freedom. We certainly don't want to be communists. So there's a lot of people out there to talk to. At the correspondence dinner on Friday night, President Trump decided to troll everybody, and Steve Bannon is saying the same thing. Trump got into this thing to win it. So now he's got his Trump 2028 hats. Do I think he'll run? Maybe, maybe not. But as much as we've seen over the last few years, nothing is out of the realm of possibility. So we're going to ramp this thing up for 2026, 2027, and 2028. So that's my Dana report for tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to my great friend and brother, Charlie Market, our co-chair, and he's going to take you down the rabbit hole on his side, and then he's going to introduce our phenomenal guest tonight. Charlie?
Thanks, Dana.
Thank you, Charlie.
The first item that I wanted to mention as a broken record, but is membership. We are thankful and appreciate everybody who is and has contributed their dues, which are voluntary. We also appreciate and support those of you who have stepped up and have been doing some things along with whatever projects we have at hand. And we want to make sure that we understand what your interests are so we can give you the opportunity to step up and participate in some of these things as they come, because on that form it shows your preferences of what interests you, what you're willing to participate in, what you're willing to take the lead on, whatever. It's just to give us a sense of where people are, because it's important to do things, to ask you to help us out on things that you are passionate about, that you have skin in the game, you really want to make a difference with, and we just want to know a little bit more about everybody. Liberty Man podcasts will resume in August 6th, I think it is,
right.
A week from Thursday. I've worked with Larry. We've come up with the next 4 Liberty Man podcasts, and he has pulled all his stuff together, so he's going to be ready to go on the first Thursday in August. And he said, and then when we do those, he said, I'm ready to pick out the next 4 and figure out what to do. So he's in this for the long haul, and we dearly appreciate that. Update on data centers. The Board of Supervisors, and thank you, Chris Grassmuck, all of them, they came to the conclusion that they want the Planning Commission and the Planning Department to come up with an ordinance that says no data centers. So anybody who's been bad-mouthing the Board of Supervisors about data centers, you now know what they support, and that will happen. I know it takes a while to do these ordinances, so that'll probably be worked on in August and passed in September. So we also have to take care of the couple of applicants that have already requested data center projects.
Okay.
So
we still have transmission lines too, Charlie, that we'll be looking at, and we'll be going back and looking at 2A with our think tank.
yeah, but transmission lines, we have no authority over. So, but we want to make sure everybody understands what's going on and when, so you can petition the process such as it is. We just had a joint working group on the comp plan, and that was between the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, in which we talked about data centers. I made sure that our data center report was to be considered in the final comp plan, because they're still looking at feedback, and the plan won't get passed till next year. But there's a whole process to go through between now and then. Supporting the farmers. I made it a point that farmers need to be helped to be more profitable. If we want to have farms in the future, we need to make it attractive for the farmers to be farmers. And also, water was discussed. In that working meeting, we also had one of the guys on the Board of Supervisors who's also the head of Frederick Water. And so they're hearing us on that regard. Another topic, articles. Between now and November election, we have an opportunity for at least each of us to write 4 letters to the editor and 4 open forum articles. My request is, well, we need to write those letters. We need to take advantage of this opportunity to get the word across. A simple word like the free market. We want the free market, not communism. I mean, that could be an article in itself. But I'd encourage all of you to pick a topic and write. Well, pick several topics, but write a little bit about each. And if you want my help, I'm here to help. I will take your thoughts, maybe a number of bullets, the points that you want to make, and make an article out of it. So something that you're willing to then submit it, and I'll help you figure out how to submit it. It's very easy to the Winchester Star, the process to go through. You just copy and paste and put in your contact information, and that's it. So I encourage everybody to do that. And I just put in an article after I come up with this idea a couple days ago that I wanted to make with you guys. I wanted to get across. I decided, well, I gotta write an article. So I wrote an article, and I used Paul Harvey's "If I Were the Devil." So I listed, I don't know, I didn't count them, probably 20 different things. If I were the devil, I would be doing this. So I just say that to say this, that I'm going to walk the walk. I'm going to walk the talk, and I want you to come with me. Okay. Dana mentioned the dangers before, during, and after the election. We don't know what's going to happen, but we do know that there are going to be plenty of places where something happens, and it's not just important to keep your head on a swivel. It's be ready to tell somebody. You see something, say something. On the other hand, if you see something going down, beat it out of there. Get out of there. Don't give them opportunities to cause problems with you. It's a no-win situation for trying to react or try and convince someone, unless you're really in danger. And if you can't, you do what you have to do. But the point is, there is no good reason to stand up and fight, because all we need to do is have good Republicans show up and vote. And that's our fight. If we can make this too big to rig, we should do that.
Absolutely.
And my last item is, as Dana mentioned, one of our ministries is the Constitution.
Big time.
We have the opportunity, and we've been working on this for a while now, learning what to do about the Constitution. And we've had the good fortune to have G.R. Mobley being willing to help us to do this. So just to give you my perspective on this, the constitutional ministry is all about accountability, making our elected officials accountable. Well, I've always kind of wondered, well, how in the world do I do that?
Right.
And this is where GR is removing the scales from my eyes, where I can see a path forward. And he's an expert and a patriot that we are taking advantage of. And he's helping us to activate this ministry, the constitutional ministry. And what we want to do, this is my initial feeling, impression, understanding, that 3 things. First, we want to develop a county constitution so that we can have people that our officials take an oath, and we can hold them then accountable to that Constitution, just like the Virginia Constitution. Secondly, we want to actively petition Richmond for grievances, for redress, and do that in a way that GR is explaining to us that we all have the right to do. And third, we want to build a constitutional compliance committee. And this is where we would particularly need your help, guys, in becoming smarter in the Constitution and being able to recognize when someone is violating our local constitution, our state or federal constitution, and we have a process to say so. Doing a study, documenting things, and saying so makes a difference. So we want to do this with JR's GR. I keep calling him JR. GR. We want to use his wisdom and make this thing
Amazing.
fly. And so we've been talking with JR, and we're now every other week. We're now going to move it to every week.
This is big, guys.
And he's our mentor and our expert and our researcher extraordinaire. And he has a website to die for that has everything on it. So, JR, if you can tell us a little bit more about yourself, as well as show us what's ahead of us, what can be ahead of us, and help us understand.
First of all, I want to say thank you. GR, thank you so much for all you've done. I've got a book full of notes, and I hope you guys are going to take some notes on what he's doing tonight. But thank you for being here tonight, my friend.
Well, I'm happy to
bless you.
serve, and it's all about you. It's nothing about me, and it's all for him.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go down. I don't like talking about myself. I'd rather start just fire hosing everybody, and I have a tendency of I can prolifically do that, and so if I do that, please let me know, or at least write notes down if you've got questions. Before I move on, you made a couple of comments, and so I'd like to just throw these out on your comments regarding the data centers. The fact that they're basically saying no data centers in your county, in your areas, that's not good enough. You need to make sure that those data centers and AI centers have zero connections to any public systems, to any of your systems, to your local info. I mean, as a matter of fact, they're completely unconstitutional, and what they're doing is unconstitutional. And there's so many different ways from your state constitution to your federal constitution, but the problem is our constitutional literacy is what's killing us. So this is where we begin. I have articles. If you want to actually, just to overwhelm these newspapers, I'm more than happy to have you do a co-byline. If you want to write an article or editorialize comments that I've made in articles, then you're more than happy to just copy and paste the whole thing, or just add what you want to. If you're looking for ideas, reference materials, and ways of saying it, because getting information out is critical. And you can actually find many of my articles on the Constitutional Articles page. This is where I talk about the process of republic review, which is what Thomas Jefferson and James Madison did in 1798. The concept of actually rescinding the 17th Amendment, the resolutions of 1798 as well. And then I started a series of articles that I did right before the pandemic, because I actually saw in the news what was going on in China in 2019, and actually said, this is going to hit us because they've already set the stage for a pandemic. And I saw that that's exactly what was happening. And so what I did was I started a conversation with what is the real problem, and then martial law in the 21st century, and then the unknown teeth of the Constitution. And then I started writing some other articles and supporting some other states like South Dakota, constitutional legal jurisdiction of limitations of the federal government or the general government. But one article that everybody really needs to see, and it's in the Constitutional Perspectives page, and this is, the first one's the truth about the 17th Amendment.
Right.
The 17th Amendment didn't take away your state legislature's vote and suffrage in the Senate. They've surrendered it. They can take it back like that. And this will go through exactly how constitutionally and what's happened and what really happened with the 17th Amendment. And This one, Who's Failing America, is regarding our constitutional crisis. But the one that I would recommend everybody read, and it's a long one, it's 74 pages, so it's a mini book. But again, all of these would give you a lot of fodder to throw at the progressives in talking about our government, our form of government, and so forth, because most people don't even really understand what republicanism is and what our Republican form of government is under the federal Constitution and the stage it's set for all governments underneath it to become, because it set the stage as a hybrid constitutional republic. Why counties matter most? It's an architectural and functional view of our government itself. So anyway.
What a great resource. Thank you.
It's an incredible resource.
So reasonable people, equally informed, seldom disagree. That's my axiom. And I'll say it again, reasonable people, and I believe the majority of America is reasonable. You got that 20%, Karens and so forth on left, right, and, these fringes that are out there. But I still believe the majority of people are out, because when we really looked at when America was locked up and so forth, the numbers weren't that staggering of who was really out in the streets. Those numbers weren't there. And so that means that people are still reasonable. They're still trying to abide by the laws. And so reasonable people, when we're equally informed, we seldom disagree. And as a matter of fact, we'll even, unite and do things and make sacrifices. We're a very compassionate society. Very. As a matter of fact, compassionately, we unconstitutionally went into world wars. We unconstitutionally have done all sorts of things for the world. But what we need to do is get equally informed so that we can stop doing things unconstitutionally and actually start setting the standard that was designed within that Constitution. Because before those world wars occurred, many states around the world, and this is going to make people probably get a headache. Many of the states around the world should have been admitted into the United States as a state, or I should say, should have been placed on the process of becoming a state, because the United States Constitution allows any state to petition and become a state in the United States.
Wow.
And just imagine where our wars and the strife around the world would be if everybody that loved America, and as a matter of fact, I've said this for a long time, when we look at the foreign policy plan, what would happen if Trump actually told the people of Crimea, Ukraine, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and so forth, if you want to have an open, free election, we'll come in and help you with that election to determine whether you wanted to become a state in the United States. And if you, the people, decide, we will assist you in making you a territory and putting you on the path of becoming a state in the United States. What would happen to China and its people? Because we would have Tiananmen Square revisited, the same thing with Russia, and so forth. When the people actually hear that the United States is actually going to make a true difference in their lives, instead of being involved in regime changes and supporting the globalist agenda as we have for over a century. I mean, these are ideas that, actually come from the Constitution when you start reading it and start realizing if we would have been following this, where we would be as a nation, as a world. But anyway, in my academic source documents, I go through a very specific series of documents to help everybody understand the evolution of our government. Now, as I say, it's the proverbial horse's mouth. The greatest treasure that we have to understanding the Constitution are the ratification debates. Being a compact, basically a compact written form by the states and ratified by the states, the Constitution is basically their compact. And this is why when they sat down and when the Federalists defined every line in the Constitution, those definitions became legally binding, because that is the process of contract law. And if you look it up, if you've been involved in deep contracts, the federal government's very quick to come after you on violations of a contract because, you stipulated it meant this is what this meant, so forth and so on. They'll even go after your emails and so forth to find out if there was any back chatter regarding, did you know this, or was this something you were planning? Because they hold everybody accountable to that contract.
Yep.
to the letter, and the states have failed to do that. Well, that's why Madison and Jefferson did what they did in 1798, and they missed the mark. So what they had to do is they had to actually commit a coup, and so in 1800 they successfully did that. Anyway, if you really want to understand the Constitution, I read this every year, and we do this on my radio show. And as a matter of fact, before I go too much farther, you can go through my radio show. It's the Red State Radio, I call them podcasts, but these are the archives of my radio show. And if you want to start at the very bottom, January 1st, this is where we start talking, and you get a lot of details of what we're talking about. But when we get up here, I've been so busy because of the election, you'll notice, sorry, there's no really details. This is where we started covering the ratification debates, and my schedule went sideways around April timeframe. So anyway, that being said, if you listen to these, you'll actually be able to read along because we tell you what documents we're reading. And those documents, again, are on the academic source documents page. So forgive me for doing all of this, but the academic source documents page is literally the list of the documents that we cover in order. This is the chronological order of what we cover from January all the way into December. So right now we're in the middle of the summertime, and we're wrapping up on the ratification debates with Virginia. Right now we're towards the very end of that, and then we're going to do North Carolina, the last one, and then we're going to start covering some of these other documents down here that actually talks about, let me see here. Well, I'm going to have to fix it actually, because this is where we start talking about the
What's the matter, Lovey? You won't go out?
I'm sorry, what was that? What was that, Luann?
I think she's letting you outside because you might have to pee or something.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't resist.
When I taste it, I'll do it. So what we cover after the Constitution is we basically cover everything chronologically, from the cod fishery bounties, what they actually did with the very first act of Congress. As a matter of fact, the very first act, the first thing they penned was the act of administering the oath of office, because that's how important it was. That was the number one objective. They all had to know exactly how they were going to be sworn in so that they could all be held liable. And the act basically required every person receiving money, federal money, out of the Treasury, they had to be under oath. And this is one of the reasons why people that had financial responsibilities had to take on bonds, because, if they were going to handle money, they had to be able to have a reserve of money to pay back in case they stole the money or what have you. But anyway, long story short, we cover all of these things from the very beginning, from that very first act up until the Constitution Day, which is the 17th. And then we're going to read the Constitution line by line. And as we cover each of these things, I'll kind of hit them as the ratification debates hit them, how they defined each of these lines. So I'm kind of summarizing that. So if you really want to walk through with me on what every line of the Constitution is and read with us, then you're more than welcome to do that. Now, we have a couple of different constitutions that we provide people. They're color-coded. Mm-hmm. And one is, and I think I've shared it with
I've got
Dana, but one is over the violations of the Constitution, and the other one is the enumeration. So every line in the Constitution is a delegation of something. It's not just, fluff. There's no fluff there. Well, there's 3 preambles you could consider that fluff, but everything else are actual enumerations. And so it's either an enumeration for a role or a responsibility, but that doesn't mean it's a power. That means that they have the stewardship of admitting states into the Union. They don't have the power to admit states into the Union. That's a responsibility. And so, because when a state joins the Union, believe it or not, they're not adjoining to the federal government. They're adjoining to the several states. In other words, a one to many. In other words, they're joining a marriage of states. And so it's a role and responsibility. But in Article 1, Section 3, or Article 4, Section 3, that's where the admission of states is, you'll actually find that in the second paragraph, they have this power, but it's actually an ancillary power to make the needful rules and regulations of the territory. That's it. In other words, while it's a territory, as the steward, they have to make sure there's law and order, and they're preparing it to become a state. But when it becomes a state, it has full self-determination. It's to determine its own government, its form of government, as long as it's Republican in form. And that state is to actually create its own constitution, however they want to do it. The federal government has no say in meddling with their justice system, their governing, their politics. Zero. There's been no power delegated to them to meddle in that. And this was actually gone. We go through the Constitutional Convention, which we already did that. We actually prove and how this evolved. And so we show you the original language, because originally the eastern states wanted to actually subjugate or take away the sovereignty of the new states joining the Union. And the Virginians said, hey, you want to do what Britain did to us? Or you think that's a good idea? I mean, that's just a powder keg. That's good. That's a revolution down the road. And so as they went through the Constitutional Convention, and we can give you all the language of all of that changing, that they actually stated this concept of equal footing, that every state would become a single, separate, sovereign state. And the concepts of I'll just say the representation, both in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, was kind of driven by that state sovereignty. Anyway, let me get back to these documents here. As we build into this, the one thing I don't cover, and I kind of cover this as the very kind of introduction with the Magna Carta, is how we evolved, because we evolved as a powder keg, or from a powder keg into this hybrid constitutional republic that became the greatest nation ever to be formed since in the annals of all mankind. And so we basically came out of Britain, but when we look at Britain, Britain was just a mess until Rome actually conquered it in AD 43 or 43 AD. And they basically enveloped it in Roman law and civil law. And then they enveloped it in the Catholic Church. And then after the fall of Rome in the 5th century, the rise of the Roman Catholic Church took over. And the Roman Catholic Church started actually manipulating the governments of all of Europe by coronating and controlling the monarchies and the theocracy in maintaining their control. And so during that time frame, as soon as the Roman Catholic Church kind of stood up and civil law became one of those things, well, do we have to follow it? Or Britain, where they had to follow it, they created the Anglo-Saxon laws. And they adopted those in the 6th century. In the 9th century, under the reign of, I think it was King Alfred, they divided the kingdom into shires, which ultimately later on became counties, based on what was referred to as the counts or the land barons that controlled them going into the Magna Carta. That was 1215. But anyway, Britain became a monarchy. Its first monarch kind of rose to power in the 10th century. These land barons began gaining power in the 11th century. And Britain, at that point in time in the 11th century, with the land barons and everything else, because it was the tyranny that they were suffering under. They were suffering under this ebb and flow of having liberties and freedoms, and then the kings wanting to extract a pound of flesh for everything they were doing to fund, their opulence or what have you. So going from good tyrants to good kings, or I should say bad tyrants to good kings, they were literally suffering back and forth. And so the land barons finally started organizing. And in the 11th century, moving into the 13th century, it took them that much time to kind of finally put their foot down to say, look, we understand the word of God now because we have our own church and we're a monarch or theocracy. We understand the word of God and we have rights. And we demand that you recognize our rights, which was the impetus for creating the Magna Carta. And in paragraph, or actually some people call it chapter 61, but paragraph 61 of the Magna Carta is engraved or galvanized this right of petitioning. The right of petitioning goes all the way back, and theoretically you can prove that it goes all the way back to when Adam and Eve was kicked out, because God told man that if you need something, ask, petition me. If I don't give you your blessings, petition. I mean, look at what Egypt did. They petitioned God. Why hast thou forsaken us? Or not Egypt, Israel, while they were in Egypt. And we look at the New Testament later on, and it actually is clarified, ask and ye shall receive, knock and it shall be given unto you. God wanted us to be able to petition him. And the concept of holding him accountable was actually a part of that, because he basically made promises. And the people would say, you promised if we live your commandments, you bless us. Where's our blessings? And so it's interesting, the love that he has for us, that he allows us to have that kind of liberty. It's not only interesting, it actually is mind-boggling for most people, because most people can't believe a sovereign with the capacity of our Creator gives us that much liberty. But to prove that, 1/3 of the host of heaven was kicked out because they had that much liberty. Interesting. Anywho, as they basically demanded the right of petition, the king basically put teeth in it in paragraph 61 that said, petition me for the redress of grievances, and if I fail to do it, all of my kingdom, you can seize all my kingdom until I do. You got 40 days, and if I don't do it by 40 days, then you can seize my assets until I fix the problem. And that's actually word for word, or not word for word, but that's actually in that paragraph. So as we look at the petition and the petition process, it started becoming the weapon that the people used. And what ended up happening was it was a very effective weapon. The 13th century with the Magna Carta, and then a few years later, I think it was the 16th century with Martin Luther. Martin Luther effectively said, hey, this petition idea is pretty cool. So he used 95 theses and petitioned the king, or not the king, the Catholic Church with these 95 theses, and says, you got to get right with God. And the Catholic Church made a bad business decision saying, we're just going to ignore this guy. And in so doing, Martin Luther wasn't going to go away. What he did, because the advent of the printing press happened a little bit before that. I mean, all these blessings were happening in sequence. And because the printing press was there, Martin Luther went and got the Bible printed in the different Germanic state languages and handed them out. And within 10 years, he convinced the people and the monarchs of the Germanic states to basically reform Christianity and break away from their, ancestral heritage of salvation under the Catholic Church, and actually create a new path of salvation. That's big. 10 years, and they were able to do that. We've been suffering for how long in America, and we still haven't broken away or forced them back into the box, because we just keep suffering, because we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, and there's no path or method to do that. But we'll get to that. So later on, a little bit later on that same century, the 16th century, was when King Henry wanted his divorce. He says, I'm going to do that. They did it over there in Germany. I'm going to do that. But the difference was, Martin Luther convinced the people that this was wrong, that the Catholic Church needed to get right with God. Henry wanted a divorce. And so what he ended up doing was he created a religious schism in the land of Britain that was basically just ready to boil over until, and that is literally what happened, because once the monarchical theocracy was finally set up, and I believe it was finally set up at 1611 when the King James Version of the Bible was printed. Now they actually had their own word of God. It was the King's Bible. And now this is the supreme law of the land. The king had general powers. Parliament had, these powers that were given them over taxation and so forth. But still, the king could be the tyrant and ignore them. But bottom line, the monarchical theocracy was finalized and kind of really took form. It technically wasn't finalized until after the Glorious Revolution. But the point is at this point in time, the Puritans and all these other different faiths started rising up, because they realized that, well, they weren't necessarily on board with this. They were, either they were happy, or it just woke them up and go, well, if he can change that, then why didn't he change it to this, and so forth. So Britain became rife with all sorts of different religious factions. And by the time, I want to say 1645, about a century later, paganism was, rooted pretty deep in Britain. And that's when I think it was King Charles took over and banned paganism.
Sounds like today.
He banned the winter wilding and so forth. And because he locked down and took away religious freedom, ultimately within the next 4 or 5 decades, I think it was 3 to 4 decades, the Dutch monarchy got involved because of the pleas from Britain to let these people have their religious freedom. Please come and help us. They supported the Glorious Revolution, which basically got rid of King Charles. He basically allowed this concept of the freedom of religion, allowed the Bill of Rights, and now they had two instruments, the Magna Carta and the Bill of Rights, to protect their freedoms, but they still had a general powers constitution. In other words, the king had all the powers. In other words, the way it worked in Britain is the king could do anything he wanted as long as he didn't violate the Magna Carta or the Bill of Rights. Now, when we created our government, just as a quick, shift,
This is cool.
the Constitution was very specific, which is why the Bill of Rights was not necessary. And this is why the Constitution was ratified without a Bill of Rights, because it was constantly stated that in England, the king had the prerogative and he could do what he wanted as long as he wasn't violating. But in America, the reverse was in effect. The government could only do these things. If it wasn't enumerated, if it wasn't delegated to them, they couldn't meddle with it. So why do we need a Bill of Rights if they don't have any power over religion, if they don't have any power over speech, if they don't have any power over energy, education, housing, labor, on and on and on? If they don't have those powers over, creating roads and highways, on and on. I literally, it's a huge list. But the point is this, is that in America, under this Constitution, if you look at the difference in our compact versus the rest of the world has what we would call a general power of attorney, where all power is granted. In England, they have this thing called, again, the Bill of Rights, the Magna Carta, where they have these stipulations against those general powers. But in America, we only granted very specific and limited powers. No implication of powers. It has to be a derivative of the power enumerated. And if it's not, you can't do it. Now, out the gate, that started getting broken and so forth. But nevertheless, as we kind of look at, and by the way, this whole thing about common law was building and building. And now they had the King's Bible. Now, after things started working, and actually working pretty good after the Glorious Bill of Rights, a guy by the name of Blackstone wrote this thing called the Commentary on the Law. And in that, he basically laid out, how common law and how everything worked, nuts and bolts, an awesome examination of the British common law system entwined or basically ingrained with the Bible as the supreme law of the land, which is how they kind of held the king accountable. If he was violating God's law, then they could go after him that way as well, because that was the supreme law of the land. Now, in America, when you look at the colonies and how they were all set up, every colony in America was set up for different reasons. Georgia was basically a relief point of the penal colonies in England, where they said, we got too many people that are committing white-collar crimes, and so let's see if they want to go and do indentured service, and we can send them to Georgia and give them land, and they can just be free out there. And so Georgia, and that's why the plots of land were 10 acres square instead of 100 acres, because it was a strategic plan to ensure that the density of population was such as if Spain decided to march north from Florida into the colonies, they would have to go through a dense population at Georgia, the very southern end of it, to awaken them and say, hey, the Spaniards are coming. So there was a lot. I mean, the king did a lot of things, or I should say the monarchs did a lot of things in managing and manipulating these colonies that they created. And every single colony was created by a charter. A charter is something granted by a sovereign. And so in America, once the Constitution came along, charters were pretty much banned, because the sovereigns, as we look at it in our American republicanism, this is really important to understand. In America, under the Declaration of Independence, we recognize that we actually create sovereigns. We, the people, institute our government. And in so doing, we grant them the powers, giving them the consent to govern us over these specific things. That means that when it comes to declaring war, as much as your neighbors may rattle and get all pissed off about what's going on in the world, they can't declare war. Only Congress can do that. And only Congress can call forth the militia. So these very specific powers that were granted, that was granted to Congress. Well, at the state level, we granted very specific powers as well. Well, technically, at the time of the Constitution, every state was granted general powers, which is why the importance of a Bill of Rights was occurring, which is why in the 1780s, Virginia created a Bill of Rights, because they were afraid that now that there was nobody to really check them, in other words, the king wasn't around to, keep Virginia and the Virginia government in check. They wanted to have their own check. So they said, we need a Bill of Rights. And so George Mason was the ultimate author of that document. Madison helped him and worked on him as an underling and one of his first jobs at the state legislature and so forth. Incredible. That being said, as we look at the Bill of Rights that was in Virginia, many of the states didn't have Bill of Rights. But they all had general powers. There were no state, not one state, had a limitation of enumerations. As a matter of fact, the framework of the U.S. Constitution was so unique and so different, the concept was so different, that even the framers themselves didn't see many of the things that they integrated into it. I'm saying this because this usually rubs people the wrong way, and I just have that tendency, and technically, I guess I enjoy it. But when John Adams said that the Constitution was created for a righteous people, I'm telling you he was wrong. I'm telling you that was his paradigm, and he saw it that way because at that point in time, they were righteous people, and obviously they were probably more righteous than any other nation in the world. The fact is, though, that if that's the case, then the Constitution is a dead letter and worthless for us because we're not righteous, because America is no longer 50% righteous people. We've actually turned that corner. Now, we have good people, we have reasonable people, and again, reasonable people, legally informed, seldom disagree. But that doesn't mean that they're righteous or they're looking for a theocracy or anything like that, where Adams lived and thrived within a theocracy. Adams was a Puritan. And when we look at some of the ills and what the Puritans had done, don't think that the Puritans didn't deserve, or I should say, they created the problem themselves by actually doing what they did in instigating these issues with the king that caused, the ramping up and the ramping up and the ramping up, the Tea Party and so forth. And this is why the king actually did what he did in responding in kind after the petitions and the Articles of Association were sent in 1774. The king, where did he land all the troops? Well, he didn't land them all in Britain or in Massachusetts, but he sent his leadership into Massachusetts, and they basically started moving the king's resources, most of them, and he brought in others as well into Massachusetts to basically say, and it was the first colony that he dismissed all of their government and put in his own governor. And this is where it all really began. But even before that, in 1763, it really started with this, there was a proclamation that basically took the Western lands away from the American colonies, where people were living out there. People were obtaining their homes and so forth. And all of a sudden, the king sent his troops out there and said, get out of here, and drove them out, burned their property, burned everything down, and said, the king is giving this to the Indians. This was a part of the manipulation that the king was doing in trying to teach the Americans that, they're subjects, they're not Englishmen. Because this new King George III, unlike his father, didn't necessarily care for the Americans. He had ambitions, and actually his plan was to eventually hand America or the American colonies over to, I think it's the East or whatever, the Indies Trading Company. I think it's the West Indies, whatever.
East India Trading Company.
Thank you. The point is that this guy was pretty maniacal, and he raised up, and if you've read the Declaration of Independence, the rough draft, Thomas Jefferson even accounts how he raised up and armed the slaves to revolt, in our midst and so forth. He was constantly screwing around with us. And bottom line, as we responded, he responded back, and he pushed harder and he pushed harder. And ultimately what ended up happening, I think it was 1770 with the British massacre, or the Boston massacre, I should say. And John Adams defended them. And, it's just everything kept on mounting. This was all happening to force the United States to truly unite. Because when you look at the Articles of Association, when we go through these things, when I actually cover these documents right here, the Articles of Association, there's no power granted to this body government called Continental Congress. They're just working to execute these economic measures that they're no longer going to allow the states. And so they're making sure that the states aren't buying anything from Britain. They're not, selling anything that's specifically desirable to the king. So when they sent that document along with the first and the Grand American of Continental Congress, this is what they sent in October. And the king read that. He was pissed. And this is where the world's worst business decision was made. Because had he granted the American colonies the one thing they wanted, which was representation, he would have kept the Americas. But instead, he says, I'm going to show those people. And everybody knows the rest of the history. And the billions of dollars that they spent over the years of coercion and so forth. And even though now they've corrupted us and we are under their control and so forth via corruption, not legitimate, it's not legitimate control, but it still cost them billions and billions of dollars. And in a second, like that, we can break away by using the Constitution as our weapon. But we have to understand it, and we have to use petitions, and we, the people, have to unite in doing this. If you think that the courts are the mechanism in the process, then you must perceive that we have a judiciary form of government, because they're not supposed to solve our problems. When it says in the First Amendment that the right of the people to petition government for the redress of grievances shall not be abridged, that means that we have a right to petition our representatives, because that's our government. They're the ones that can make the laws. They're the ones that expunge the laws. The court has no legislative authority, none. As a matter of fact, they don't even have negative powers. When John Marshall stated that they could nullify laws, they can't. They have to go to Congress and say, you have to expunge that, because there was no mechanism for them to enforce any form of nullification. Only the president had negative powers, but that could be overridden by Congress with 2/3 of both houses. We understand the veto power. That is the only legislative power the president has. That's it. In other words, all power was vested in Congress to govern us. The president's roles and responsibilities is to execute the laws of the Union, to basically administer our foreign affairs, those types of things. And the federal court was to basically be a umpire between the states and actually to engage with the world in foreign courts, which is why their jurisdiction is what it is. So when we go through the Constitution, we'll point all of these things out. Many people love telling me that, well, the Constitution declares common law. And if you read the ratification debates, and actually, if you've actually read the Constitution, you'll say, hey, it doesn't declare that at all. As a matter of fact, the federal government has no jurisdiction over common law. Only the Seventh Amendment mentions common law, and it only basically says this, that in controversies, and I'm paraphrasing, in controversies where the controversy is great, or in cases of common law, in controversies that are greater than $20, the trial by jury shall be preserved. Interesting. What are common law cases? Well, easily property cases where, there's a property dispute, even like eminent domain, if they take and you've got a property dispute, hey, you can't do that, because they're taking it for private purposes, what have you, and they still take it. You have a right to go in front of a jury, but you don't get that. Right now, you go in front of a magistrate. The same thing with divorce. I don't know of a divorce that, when a couple is breaking up, even after a year, where there's not more than $20 sunk in there between them, and they don't stand in front of a jury. The Constitution is clear. If it's a common law case, the right of a trial by jury shall be preserved. And we've lost that. I don't know any common law cases at all where that is even happening. There are no common law cases. As a matter of fact, all common law courts have been shut down. I've been told, oh, we've got a common law court, but that's like, it's like a bunch of kids going in a back room and saying, okay, we've declared ourselves a common law court. Yeah, you can do that, but it doesn't make it legitimate. Not in our Republican form of government. You need your representatives to make that. And as by going through the Constitution, there's many things that you start learning, and you start understanding that while the states had general powers, and every state in the Union declared common law to be the law of the land except for Louisiana, their civil law, then every state that actually had declared common law, not one state ever repealed that. Not one state. So how is it how did it get repealed? Because we learn in the Constitution that it can only be done, one, by the legislature if they possess the general powers to do that, or two, because at the time of the Constitution, they all possess general powers, or two, if the enumeration is there, then they have the authority over the Constitution. But if common law is not enumerated in your state constitution for the state justice system for jurisdiction, then the common law is preserved to the counties and the people. The state has no jurisdiction over it. It's that simple. It's like a limited power of attorney. As the Constitution was being ratified in North Carolina, James Iredell basically says, has anybody ever heard that a man who had land in Coswell and Orange decided to sell his land in Orange and gave a specified or limited power of attorney to a gentleman to sell that land? Has anybody ever heard the idea that that gentleman that could sell that land in Orange could just assume on his own that he could sell that land in Coswell as well? No. And as a matter of fact, nobody would recognize that, because when he presents them the power of attorney, they would see, oh my goodness, you only have the power to sell that land in Coswell. You can't sell this land. Or in Orange, you can't sell this land in Coswell. And the point is that limited and defined powers tie our government's hands. So they had to convince everybody that politics abounds everywhere as long as the majority of the legislatures agree, Democrats, Republicans, or whatever, or a unified effort, and they all agree to give you health care, then you get health care. In other words, because you haven't been taught of an enumerated constitution with very specific and limited powers, and because nobody understands that general powers weren't delegated and that they can't do those types of things, they're getting away with it. And the Supreme Court has been supporting these things. The last thing I want to present, just to give you some ideas of what we can talk about and how we can go through this, because when we come back, I want to talk about the process of actually engaging and the different paths, because as I see it, we the people have the responsibility. When we look at, the pecking order, everything starts with us. We're the ones that are supposed to institute, and our most precious government, the government we're supposed to institute, is our county government. And we never did that. And that's why the states have been able to successfully take and control our county governments, because we've never created that constitution. Let me see if counties start getting erected in the states where the people have actually created these constitutions. And there's problems with this, and you have to do it a very specific way, and we'll get into that. But the point is that let me see how anybody, any state and the federal government will try to successfully be able to rip our government away from our hands. Because when that starts to happen, then people really start getting, because that's just like King George III started to take away government from us. If you understand the ramifications, the parallels here. When you own that government, the reason we aren't passionate about our county government is because you don't have a constitution. You can't hold them accountable to things other than these ambiguous powers that I voted for you and you're my representative and this oath of office. Yeah, we got them there, but until we actually give them delegations of powers in a constitution, then they're not yours yet. You have to take possession of them. And so that's why counties matter most. And this is why we actually have to start going down this path, and how the party is very complicit in the problem. The court is the biggest instigator of the problem. And then there's these groups within the patriot movement, whether it be the Convention of States, whether it be these other organizations such as the John Birch Society, 10th Amendment Center, and the rest of these guys, they don't want you to understand how to solve this problem. They want to tell you, oh, it's nullification. No, it's it's convention. Neither of those problems get government back, get the genie back into the bottle. Nullification will never get the genie back in the bottle, nor will the Convention of States get the genie back in the bottle.
Hey, GR,
Go ahead.
this is phenomenal. This is fantastic. And I hope you guys are willing to join in this. But you covered this like 7 things this morning that the nullification and so forth that will not put the genie back in the bottle, which is why we have to follow the Constitution.
Right. Well, it's one of the processes will. It's called interposition.
Interposition.
When you look through history, interposition is always the process that solved the problem. When we look at the land barons, they interposed upon King John. They drew their swords and said, "You will address our concerns. We have rights and we demand our rights." That is what interposition is all about. Look up the definition of interposition. Right. It's to see. Madison called it seizing and arresting the evil. It is basically stopping the pursuance of, something that's happening with whatever is necessary, whether it be political force, physical force, what have you. And what we're seeking, and we have all the power we want. This goes back to whether that Constitution is literally made for, their time or for our time. And I'm here to tell you, John Adams had no idea what an evil nation this would become. He had no idea. But the one person or the one entity that did was our Creator. Only he knew what we would need, which is why he gave us everything we need, which is why, and this always gets people a bad taste, the 14th Amendment is the keystone. The 14th Amendment was the keystone of giving us the teeth we need to actually take this country back. And I'll just end with this. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is an eligibility standard. Any person who is under oath, while in office and while serving under that oath, if they fail to support the Constitution that they're under oath to support, then they are no longer eligible to be in office.
Ever.
They're to be banned for the rest of their life, to be removed immediately and banned. It's an eligibility standard. It is not a due process. It is not an impeachment where you got to come up with an indictment. When you actually have legislators in your state that actually voted for something that was directly a violation of the Constitution, I'll give you a case in point. Many state legislators voted for digital currencies to create a digital currency as a legal tender for the payment of debt within your state. Guess what? That's a violation of Article 1, Section 10. No state shall pass any law making anything other than gold and silver coin to be the legal tender for the payment of debt. Yeah, and we already got paper, we've already got electric, and we already got these other mechanisms of payment. So they've been violating it. Nobody's even caught on to it to this point. So,
and people are afraid, GR. I mean, because we don't know. So you go to challenge somebody who sounds smarter than you are, okay, and has buddies behind him. People back down to that. And that's why we wanted to put something like this together so we can redress these grievances one at a time as we go along, kind of like we did with the think tank, with our think tank on our Second Amendment or the data centers. And we came up with reasons why and sold those concepts.
Right. So let me just say this. The understanding what the Constitution really means and confirming this, because see, I may have spent an hour telling you things, but it means nothing. The day you read these things with me and your mind's eye sees this and you actually bear witness to the fact, now it's different because it becomes a part of you. It's like reading scripture. The framers are speaking to us from the dust of what they did, and this was all done by his divine hand. They all claimed, as a matter of fact, our very first Thanksgiving was a proclamation where we took one day and sanctified the Constitution by a day of service. In other words, go read Washington's proclamation of Thanksgiving. It was recognizing that the Constitution was given to us by his hand and that he called upon the nation to take one day to serve him. That is the essence of sanctifying a blessing. And why is it that we stopped doing that and actually assumed this concept or this holiday of, let's just call it gluttony? How is that? How did we get there? That was by design.
Absolutely.
And so I say now start preparing via your ministry, helping everybody start understanding that this coming Thanksgiving, we need to serve him. Let's put our, let's put our money where our mouth is.
Yeah.
Stop the gluttony on Thursday. Have your turkey, do your thing on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. But make Thursday his and thank him and serve him for giving us this Constitution.
Wow,
Watch things start to change. If this nation actually starts doing those things, and it's the little things. It's literally the little things. I've been on this campaign of getting this nation to recognize Thanksgiving as Washington called this nation to do.
Wow.
So let me challenge the ministries to doing this. I want to see how you've actually, convinced everybody to do your turkey on Saturday. To heck with Black Friday or whatever. Let's save this nation. That's our most sacred holiday. Now, I do get this because this is the love of my life, and if she calls me twice, I've got to get it. So hold on, I'll be right back.
Wow, folks. Chip, I mean, you and I have been talking a lot about this while we're waiting for GR to jump back on. You've been involved in this. Woody's been involved with this. Charlie and I have gone through. So some of the stuff we're hearing, again, but I want to challenge everybody. And how many of us really knew that Thanksgiving was Washington's day? He called all of us to take a day to serve him. We've been told all kinds of stories. That's the brainwashing that's led us to here. Am I right, Chip?
Yeah. We've been so groomed into darkness, and I thank God for GR and his willingness to share what his knowledge, and I don't know of anyone, and I've come across many in my 3 years that claim to be constitutional scholars and whatnot, but I don't know anybody can hold a candle to GR.
I don't either.
Yeah. What a blessing to have him. I'm just feel so grateful. What a call tonight. And thank you guys for giving him platform tonight.
We're going to do this again.
Yeah.
And we're also meeting on Mondays. So if you're interested, folks, in jumping on, go into you've got my number, or text me, and we'll put together a schedule like we do on a think tanks. And Charlie and I'll arrange it, and we'll put together a small group, and it'll get bigger and bigger so that we'll be able to walk into a board of supervisors and say, hey, this is the situation. This is what we know. This is how the Constitution reads based on this, and this. You can do this or can't do this, and we need your help to do this. And we're going to push this up the ladder to your delegate and right into Richmond. And that's what we hired you to do. That's you served us. You serve us. It's we the people. So if you all are interested, hit me up, text me, go on the site and just shoot me a message through the website. Charlie, you've been listening to all of this, and you and I have been on here with GR quite a bit. What's your take, brother?
As always, I'm overwhelmed.
I'm fascinated.
I'm encouraged. Like I said earlier, this is something in general that I wanted to do, but I did not know how.
Right. And now we have guidance.
Yes. So it behooves us to take advantage of his wisdom and his willingness to share that, which I find amazing.
Absolutely.
And use his website as a education as well as a resource. And like he said, help us write those 4 letters and 4 op-eds using his material. And we just say this would be by Charles Markert and
Mount Patriots.
Mobley.
Okay, so sorry about that. My wife had a car accident on her way home. So
is she okay?
Yeah, she hit a deer. And this is the 3rd deer she hit, and this one's probably done the most. It's drivable. She'll be able to make it home.
Oh my gosh! Prayers for her, brother.
Anyway, yeah.
This has been GR. This has been absolutely fantastic. Keep rolling. because we're fired up because, like Charlie said, we've all wanted to do this, but we didn't know where to start.
It's
It's like going into a church and, I've given myself to Christ. Who's going to guide me?
Well, we've been indoctrinated with bad information.
Have we ever?
So eating the elephant's got to be done one bite at a time. And we can talk more next time into some of the details. I think what's really important in the next meeting is to help everybody understand how the courts are not the process, how the party is currently designed to fail us, and how nothing out there other than interposition is going to get the genie back into the bottle. Right. Which is one of the reasons why James Madison and Thomas Jefferson said, this is what we got to do. And they actually gave us the breadcrumbs. And so we can talk about that next week. I don't know if I've scheduled with you next week. I'll look at my schedule. But Dana, we need to get back together so I can come right back and go to that. And then we can start talking about, how do we start interposing? But you need to start getting smart. If you want to become a statesman on the Constitution, you actually have to be able to, make your own citations of Iredell, Nicholas, and these other citations from the ratification debates that clearly blow out of the water any concepts of general powers, any concepts that the government can do whatever they think is necessary and proper, or their supreme over all things. All of those types of things were completely refuted in the ratification debates, and as well as what the court's doing today. And giving you all of this knowledge, that's why you won't get this information. You will not get this education from Hillsdale or any accredited college. They will not want you to have this. And as a matter of fact, if you haven't watched our little 7.5-minute video of why the 3 presidential vetoes of the Department of Transportation, you need to, because this literally clarifies that the Department of Transportation shouldn't exist, but there's not one organization calling for the end of the Department of Transportation. And yet it has been the vacuum sucking up trillions of dollars for infrastructure bills, all unconstitutional.
Yeah.
And we're being taxed on it. Hey, GR, since you've got control of it, you want to show folks where to go to find that video?
So
there's so much stuff on here.
Little red YouTube, Reclaiming the Republic YouTube, boom, right there.
Everything is color coded, guys. So this color goes with that color goes with this.
So the YouTube channel in that video is not the same thing as the color coded constitutions. I'll show you that as well. But if you just look for the presidential vetoes of the Department of Transportation, we've put this out in many different forms and different areas, but it's right there on Reclaiming the Republic on YouTube. And let me go back. If you're looking for the color-coded constitutions, constitutional articles, and I'll just do a Control F, look for color, and there you go, color-coded constitution. You can download these. These are the color codes of the violations of the Constitution. There are different degrees of violations and so forth. And then if you go down a little further, these are the enumerations, and we actually have 2 color codes. We have the page color code, and then we have the enumeration color codes. So we have 3 different color codes for the page, and then the enumeration color code. And now you can see, this mauve or pink, whatever you want to call it, and then the very specific yellow, green, yellow, and so forth. And then you look at that and you go, oh, that's a role, that's a responsibility. Oh, that's a standard. That's a restriction. That's a power. The blue and red are the powers.
Blue and red are powers.
And the purple and whatever that is, I think it's purple and gray, those are criminal jurisdiction.
Wow.
So when you break it all down, they've made sure, because they wanted to, they wanted to create a very hard limitation of what they could do. So in other words, if it's not listed, they can't do it. So let me get going. I'm going to call my wife back to make sure that she said the car's drivable, but I just thought as we were talking, she probably needs to look at the temperature, because if the radiator is broken and leaking, it's not going to be drivable for very long, and she could really screw up the engine. And then
not far from
I don't know, it's no cost to us when we hit a deer, but if you damage it from doing something stupid like that, then
remember the deer hit you.
No, actually up here it doesn't matter. If you hit a deer,
I just know here you don't hit the deer hit you.
If you swerve to miss the deer, then you're liable. If you just hit that deer because it's popped out, even if you don't even try to hit the brakes or anything, because you know, whatever,
Another
it's
rule.
covered. There's that many deer up here.
Right.
Anyway,
I mean, it's another rule. I mean, everything
let me
is
get
a
going.
money grab.
God bless everybody. I'm going to punch
Love
out.
you, GR.
Thank you,
You're
JR.
the best, brother.
GR,
God bless
thank you so much, my friend, and we will talk on Monday.
You bet. God bless.
God bless you.
All right. Now I got to figure out how to leave.
The little button
I
in the
love it.
lower right.
This
Little
has been
button
a
on
real
the right?
treat.
Lower right.
On the lower right.
It says leave.
It just says end
Uh,
or leave.
well, because I'm sharing, I think I have to stop sharing.
Yeah, that might help.
That could be.
Means when I share.
Unless you want me to kick you out.
Wiggle
Well,
the
you know what?
cursor around.
There's always this way right here. Boom. And that takes me out of sharing. Now I can see the leave. I'm gone. Thanks. Bye.
Excellent. GR, have a
Bye,
very
GR.
blessed night.
Love
Thank
you,
you.
brother.
Thank you.
Bye
Thank
now.
you. Thank you. Fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
guys, there's our template, the beginning of it that you can see what Charlie and I have been working on, and Chip has, and Woody has, and we got Wayne coming up in about 10 minutes. What I'd like to do, since we have a couple minutes, is I'd love to hear some feedback from Dan or Gunny or Wayne or Chris Grassmuck, Jocelyn. What do you guys think, and where do you see us going from here? Who wants to jump in with an idea?
For me, Dana, it's a lot to absorb,
Isn't it?
but there's also the part of me that says there's a lot to be examined.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for example, a lot of the arguments that he can say the Constitution is clear on. Well, we have a huge body of constitutional scholars on some of these issues. I would like to get their input on some of these issues and how and if and how they have been examined and ruled on, because I know that there's been a long history of constitutional analysis and adjudication through the courts. So I find this all very interesting, but this is my
too.
first exposure to it. I prefer to withhold judgment until I've had a closer look at what some of the claims made have
Well, that's
been.
what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to research and examine because
Right.
just like GR has always said to us, and he'll say, we say the same thing. Don't take my word for it. Go
Right.
take a look. Right. I mean, he's the same way we are, which has been really great. And then we'll go look it up. Go see if that's true or not. Okay.
Right.
Cross check this. You know, we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing as well. And so far, what Charlie and I have found is we're the rabbit holes, or the few of the rabbit holes that we've gone down on, have been spot on. You know, they've just been spot on. But what it does do is it gives us a platform, at least to start, so that
Right.
when we're working with the Board of Supervisors, we can go, wait a second, is that constitutional? Can they do that? Can they raise the taxes on this? Or
Right.
can they do that? You know, like we did with Think Tank. Look at how much time we put into that.
Sure.
You
So
know,
I would just add to that, if I may, that we've been working with GR for 40 years. His knowledge and his expertise is simply 100% unimpeachable. The only defense or the only confrontation that he's going to come up against is the enemy that doesn't want us to know what he knows. That's 4 years of experience talking to you, working with local officials and magistrates. It's absolutely 100%. There's nobody knows this stuff better than he does. And trust me when I say, because we've had the same concerns that you just expressed, bro. We don't want to be caught, you know, flat-footed. Yeah. So we've done our homework. But again, I'm not saying this to encourage you not to do your homework. I'm just saying that 4 years has taught us that this guy knows his stuff. That's all.
Okay.
and it gives us a platform to start. I mean, it's like we need to look. We're finally looking. You know, I'm watching all of the things. How many of us right now are watching everything that's going on with Obama or Fauci or all of the things that we've been told that aren't even close to true? We were talking the other day about if you don't pay your taxes on your house after you've paid for it all these years, they come and take it. I mean, that's not constitutional. That's a basic.
Sure.
Property taxes, are they legitimate? So at least it gives us a chance to follow along. This is what I love most about President Trump, is he's made us look over the last 10 years. He's going to bring it back to we, the people. Where's Jocelyn?
And it's going to involve a lot of
time. It's going to take
time. Years and years and years to clean up all this stuff.
We got to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere. Absolutely. Agree.
And that's what Mountain Patriots wanted us, that's what we started with. It started as a small neighborhood watch, and look what we're doing on a weekly basis. We got Dan, we got you involved. We got everybody that's on here that's involved. People are writing. Everybody on this has got a project that they're working on right now. I can look at everybody on here and go, he's doing this, that person's doing this person's doing this. I mean, holy cow, what a group of patriots. And I will say this, how many other groups had something like this tonight? Or had anything like this anywhere? Okay, so I look at us as, we're blessed. We're blessed to have people like a Dan Best that does what he does, or a Mark Quimby that writes something, or Charlie. I mean, we are blessed, and that goes for everybody on here. I want to get Jocelyn's perspective here, because I know, she's right. It'll take 20 years to change a generation of minds. But you know what's cool? You got somebody on here like Carl, who is teaching environmental sciences to 9th through 12th graders. And he's part of the next generation that runs this country at 30, 31 years old. That's a start. And what we started talking about is being able to get the kids interested in this by using a simple tactic of, hey, do you know that when you're 18, you have to sign up for selective service, which is unconstitutional. And that means that if there's a war, they can call you in. Now you've got somebody's ear. Well, what else are they going to do to me? Now at least we have a platform. We learn as we teach. So I see it. Jocelyn,
we have the biggest constitutional case in front of us to be used as a teaching tool, in my view, with all the revelations taking place with regard to Fauci and COVID, because that was so blatant in its constitutional violations, and it affected so many people personally.
It's in our face.
Yep. Absolutely.
It is right in our face. And how many people were yelling at us years ago about how we were going to kill them by not wearing a mask, and the businesses that were, holy cow, and what is GR's thought on Joseph's story on the First Amendment the next time he's talking with you? I will find out. Okay, we talk with, if you want to join us on Monday, we do this at 11:30, and we're doing it every Monday now. But we have a nice little. We have a great group here, guys, and there's some people that couldn't make it, and we've got people like Larry, that he's part of Convention Estates. Al is part of Convention Estates. You got Rodney, who's doing the election integrity. I mean, holy cow! Look at the people that we have in this group. It's unbelievable. Right. It's unbelievable.
So, Dana, if you want my 2 cents for what it's worth,
yes, I do, Jocelyn, because I know how you think.
Well, you mean I just sound like you?
Well, sometimes, but you always add a perspective to it.
Well, I really think a lot of these things are great ideas, but they don't get any traction because we're also small. I mean, when I think of what happened during the pandemic and how many violations were blatant, look what happened. We did not have men of courage in power. And I'm talking about even Ben Klein, our own congressman. He is not with you. Courage. Okay. And we didn't have sheriffs that were men of courage, even though they call themselves conservative, constitutional conservatives. We don't have people with a spine anymore. Life is good. Life is comfortable. They don't care if a few of their rights are violated. And then over time, little by little, it's eroded, and then you end up where we are today. And so it doesn't matter what currency, it's just an evolution of currency. You know, that we went off the gold standard in an official way back with Nixon, right?
Me too.
And so a lot of people don't even understand
1913, same thing.
why that happened or whether it was right or wrong. They don't even debate those in the high schools. They don't even understand it, which is why the debt ceiling keeps going up and up and up. And of course, as a homeschool mom, you know, I did everything I could to inundate my children with scripture and with principles and the Constitution, and to expand their knowledge beyond what the public. And my kids all have, you know, academic scores to get into the best of schools. I mean, my son graduated from West Point, but they are still affected by society and peer pressure. And that's because we have made people weak. Somewhere where they're just weak. And you
know
look
what's
at
good?
Yeah, but Jocelyn, in all fairness, I totally agree with you. We've created weak people in our society, but I don't blame government for that. I blame what happens in the household for that. You look at child rearing practices, what they've become, and in large part because of pressure from liberal progressive influencers.
We let it happen.
It's terrible.
But
it's
that's
terrible.
why you know,
we're the exception, not the rule.
We're the exception.
I recognize that, but that's why I've been asking the question, why do we not have common law marriage? Because if we did have it, we would hold the fundamental family unit intact.
We used to, didn't we?
We don't have it here in Virginia.
It's never been in the Constitution, though.
So people can live together. They can have children out of wedlock. Daddy can walk away. Mommy gets all kinds of government bennies, and everybody and the kids end up with all kinds of IEPs in the public school system because they have no stability, because mommy's got boyfriends and daddy comes back and forth whenever he feels like it. I mean, it's just a farce.
What did he say at the beginning of this? Because I want to turn it over to Wayne in a second. What he said was it was put together for a moral and righteous society, and we have strayed so far
Jocelyn, what you're describing in terms of what's happening inside the family with single parenting and all that, that was a government conspiracy. That started with Johnson's War on Poverty, where they deliberately broke up black families and stuck them in hellholes in cities so that they could break them down and control them for votes. I mean, we saw this happening in the major cities. We moved here from the Chicago area. Boy, it was devastating to these families.
Same with Baltimore. Let me do this.
It was deliberate.
Let me give you one more example, okay? I won't be too long on this, but Dana, you and I have talked with Daryl Bowe. You know enough about his election integrity work.
Yes, I invited him.
Okay, Article 2, Section 3 says that no ballot counting shall be done in secret.
Right.
Okay, and this argument and the documentation has been presented to Jason Miyares on 2 occasions directly.
But they don't do anything.
Exactly. So my point is, he was the #1 law enforcement officer in the state.
They're all part of it, Jocelyn.
And he said, to Daryl, well, the voting box, right, that you put your little piece of paper in.
They're all part of it, Jocelyn.
Public. But see, so I'm saying it's just like everything else. Everything has evolved and been watered down because he sold himself as a Christian. He sold himself as a strong conservative. I voted for him, you know.
The swamp is deep, remember? And that's what but real quick, I want Chip to go real quick. He's got a comment to make, and I want to turn this over to Wayne because we are a ministry, and this is real important. We've done the Constitution. We're doing both tonight, as we usually do. Chip, what you got, brother?
I've been in this fight since 2008, my brothers and sisters. Communists have been communists the whole time. Globalists have been globalists.
Right.
Statists are statists. Men have stopped being men. That's why we're at where we are. Men have stopped being men. The head of the household, the patriarch, across the board, men are not stepping up and doing what they need to do. And I'm saying present company excluded. I'm making a general statement.
Yep.
But men
I agree.
have surrendered their authority in this country, and until we take it back, we're in this place. Get used to it.
Well, that's what we're going to do. This Mountain Patriots is going to grow. And Charlie and I have been talking about this. Charlie, you and I have some planning to do because we can pull all of this stuff together. And just this conversation we're having right now, we ought to have this conversation like we're doing right now because we're all seeing it. Welcome to the Great Awakening. So I'm going to turn this over to Brother Wayne. We're getting so much information, but the most important thing is all glory goes to Yahuwah. He is the one that gave us all of our natural rights. We try to follow that. Remember, there's two books that we follow. One is the Constitution. The most important one that the Constitution came from is the Bible. So I asked Wayne if he would take us on a journey, which he's been doing the last 3 or 4 weeks, and everybody keeps asking for Wayne to do it again. So, Brother Wayne, all yours. You're on mute.
Thank you, Dana.
I love his passion, man.
Thank everybody who's still hanging on here.
This is great.
And I want to say on the onslaught that I recognize when we're talking about spiritual matters that all of us are at different places with your faith, and perhaps there's some people that have no faith, but I would encourage you to get it. And in any case, I respect where you're at, and I'll share a couple things here tonight that hopefully that'll bless you. When GR brought up over 50 is not of this country is not a righteous nation. Right. I mean, that's pretty much indicative of what we see in the polls and how people are responding to the candidates that they elect. And there is a verse, I know some of you have heard this before, Proverbs 14, verse 34, it says, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace to any people. So what is righteousness? Well, the scriptures define at the end of Deuteronomy 6 that righteousness basically is the keeping of his commandments. Now, we do have righteousness when we come to faith in Messiah because he is our righteousness. But then once we have this faith, we act out, we work out our salvation, and it's according to, and I've been pushing this, the 10 words. And so I believe that if we can get back to that, at least that's a start, and to teach our children and our children's children as the word commands us to do. Wanted to hold up this American Patriots Bible.
Love it.
There you go.
One
of the things, it's the New King James Version. One of the things that it does do, it endeavors to correct the identity theft with the set-apart name of our Creator. They did it in 2 verses. Psalm 68, verse 4, where they use the short form Yah. And then in Isaiah 12, they also inserted in English the short form again, Yah. It's at the end of Hallelujah. And some of you know that I'm into names. It's where Yahuwah has me. He's had me for over 20 years. And I did ask him about it. And he graciously is continuing to still teach me. But I wanted to share last week at the meeting, I brought up it's a little container of, you might be able to see it. It's 6,000-year-old brimstone taken from the remains of what scholars believe were the city of Gomorrah. And it's there, according to 2 Peter, as a testimony or a witness for the ungodly. And so this is in the area of archaeology, which is also an interest in mine. And the wall behind me was my visit with my son in Los Lunos, New Mexico. I've shared that with you. That rock is written on it in ancient Paleo-Hebrew, the summary of the 10 Commandments, and it has his autograph, Yahuwah, inscribed on it. I could have kicked myself because I found out later on when I got home, in fact, recently, within the last year, that on top of that mount where we were at are remains of a Hebrew settlement. I would have loved to have climbed it and just to get and look at the artifacts. So Yahuwah's got these things for us as a testimony. He has creation for us as a testimony that he does exist. And so for the truth seeker, we should be probing these things. And tonight I wanted to share and perhaps get you to ponder. Names are important. As Dana knows, when I'm out at a restaurant, I'm interested in what people's names are. And it's a great way to get on a conversation with someone. We normally extend our hand and say, hi, I'm so-and-so, and then they normally give their name back. Because why? Names identify with people. And that's the most important thing when you want to get a communication or a conversation started. And then the next thing usually is, well, what do you do? And then people love to talk about themselves. And then as Dana and I are getting in the habit of doing,
what can we pray for you all?
Have any needs that you would like to be prayed for? And a lot of these waitresses, they'll sometimes look at you and not expect that to come out of our mouths, but generally they do. But I wanted to share something about it, and y'all can probe about this. And anything I say, by the way, I encourage you, like GR, take it to the bank of heaven, probe it, search the scriptures to see whether these things are so. And I appreciate any kind of feedback, both pro and con. But the word America, we got just a couple minutes here. Most people, if you said, well, where did that word, that name America come from? And I bet you if I went down the line of people here, perhaps if some of you are versed in history, you would say it's from the Italian explorer Amerigo Vespucci, who mapped out our country as he knew it then. Yeah, that is a viable answer to it. Most historians will say it. Some people say it's after Richard Americi, who was a financier for the explorer John Cabot. But when you break down that word, it does have meaning in the Norse or the Vikings with Amalric. And there was a professor, his name is Miskovsky, from Oberlin College in the 1920s. He wrote that America is another form of the old Gothic Amalric. Amalric. And Amal means heaven, and Rick means kingdom. The Norse is pronounced Reich, and the German is very close to Reich, which means reign or kingdom. So in reality, when we look at our country and why it was named, when we see the great providential hand of the Almighty moving on this land, how he blessed it, it was like a land flowing with milk and honey. And yet we just say, well, it was named after a cartographer, a guy who mapped it. No. I think there's some deeper spiritual meaning behind America. And I sense in my spirit that Amalric or America is another way of saying the kingdom of heaven. And of course, Messiah said that's birth in you when we receive him. And we have an awesome privilege to live in this land of America. And there's another meaning, and I won't get into it. It's basically the calling out, the call of Yah. And that's something I'm still working on, but it's a beautiful name, and perhaps it'll be changed in the future, but we've been blessed, and Yahuwah is calling us back to righteousness, as GR brought up, so the country again can turn from its wicked ways, and we can be again a righteous country. I'll say a prayer because we're at that time, Brother Dana.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Wayne.
And Dana, if you can let me say one last thing at the end of the prayer.
Okay.
I'd appreciate it.
Father Yahuwah, we are so blessed to be alive. Thank you for all the people here on this Zoom call. They each have a calling that you've ordained in their life. I ask for your continued revealing to them, even for divine appointments to happen. and cause their eyes to be open and ears that they may see your divine hand moving in a particular, what could be just a common situation, but it's really your power moving. We exalt your Son as sovereign over the universe, and we bow the knee to the throne room of heaven, and we say, Hallelujah, Yahuwah, and I pray the blessing over all of these folks tonight. Amen.
Dan?
All right, Dana, let me make one statement for all of us that are in Virginia. You wouldn't know it if you went to our local Republican website, but there is an election. And there, it's not been mentioned. We have 3 candidates that we need to vote on that are going to go up against our current Democrat Senator, Mark Warner. Please get your friends out, all of our friends and family out, make sure they vote, because most people have no clue that there's even an election.
Yep.
That's going to take place next Tuesday. And last day of early voting is Saturday. So please, let's all step up.
And we covered it at the beginning and the candidates, who's running. And I will get this out. I want to thank everybody for taking the time tonight. I think this was excellent. It gives us a lot to chew on that most people aren't even thinking about. So stay vigilant, keep your head on a swivel, keep your powder dry, and always remember your ABCs, right, Gunny? Always remember your ABCs.
Always be carrying.
Always be carrying. Everybody have a blessed night. And as we always say at the end of every one of these, this one
In the book.
is in the book. Have a blessed night, everybody. Thank you.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Green with ink.